the regular meeting of Geneva 304 School District for Monday, January 27th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Bonnie, could you call the roll?
Aye. Here.
Here. Here.
I'm here as well.
Here.
Here.
Thank you. Next, welcome. We're glad to have you all here. It's always a delight to see people in the audience. And later on, if you miss it, you can always watch the TV show. In any case, there is a roster in the hallway. If you'd like to register your attendance, you can sign in there. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have some fine high school students to lead the pledge. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. First item is the approval of minutes. We have three sessions: the regular session of January 13th, board retreat January 17th, and also executive session on January 17th. Is there any reason to break any of these out?
Yes. I was not at the retreat yet.
And Bonnie, have you received any corrections or additions? Thank you. Are there any at this time? A motion to approve the regular session for January 13th, please.
So moved.
Second. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. A motion to approve the minutes for the board retreat January 17th and the executive session of January 17th.
So moved.
Second. Aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Item 3, recognition awards, presentations, and public hearings.
I think we got to do the executive session first, right? Oh, we did.
We'll begin with Geneva High School. What makes your school special?
Good evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I have a question. Do you have a few hours? No, I'm going to do my best to stay within the very brief time parameter that was given to me, but those who know me well know that I could, in fact, talk for several hours about what makes GHS special, because I think the list goes on and on. But I want to focus on really three things tonight: caring, community, and respect. First, the caring nature of our students. During the holiday season, more than 20 extracurricular clubs, honor societies, or athletic teams gave of their time, gave of their talent, fundraised, collected canned goods, collected things for the food pantries, and I'd just like to highlight a few of those things tonight. First, the GHS VoCX students, the girls soccer team, the Ambassadors Club, the Enrich and Empower students, and the speech team accounted for more than 200 volunteer hours as they helped with the Batavia Access Toy Drive. The Geneva High School Scrubs Club collected and donated toys and gifts to the Ronald McDonald House at Central DuPage Hospital. Our Social Studies National Honor Society collected donations and food to create meal baskets for local families in our school district. The Student Council made care packages for 12 families of GHS students who are identified by our Counseling and Advising Office. The list goes on, including the Key Club, who collected basic necessities for the Community Santa Project, along with more than 1,400 items for the Salvation Army. These are just a few examples of how caring our students are and how willing they are to give of their time and, like I said, their talent as well. And I'm certain that like I said, that this list could go on and on. I don't know if you're aware of it, but more than 2/3 of our GHS students are involved in some sort of extracurricular activity at some point during their high school career. And I'm confident that at some point with their involvement in one of those extracurricular activities, that they will perform some sort of service project during their extracurricular experience. So I think it's just amazing the opportunities that our students have, and not only that they have, but they embrace them and they jump in head first and just are so willing to give of themselves. And as I speak about students tonight, I have to also share that while I think it's a given that our staff is a very caring group of people, they establish amazing relationships with our student body and they help our kids succeed. But I couldn't pass up this opportunity. It was like, I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. And on Friday, an email popped up in my inbox from an instructional assistant who we were very fortunate to hire last year. She's bilingual. And we have hit the jackpot with this employee. She does a fantastic job of helping and advocating for our Spanish-speaking students, of which we have more and more each year at GHS. And she wanted to share the following about 10 of the teachers that she works with at GHS. And so bear with me as I just read this brief message. Friday afternoon, out of the blue, unsolicited, she shares, "I would like to express my gratitude for all the effort and support you give to Spanish-speaking kids. Your work truly makes a significant impact on their lives, and I know it can go unrecognized. I understand this may sound cliche, but I want to emphasize just how important the little details are. Whether it's a video with translations, a reading that has been adapted into Spanish, the patience you show by giving these children extra time to process and complete tasks, or letting them do work in Spanish so they can understand what they are learning for later translation into English so they can practice, these gestures mean more than you might realize. They create a world of difference in the lives of these kids, helping them feel included, supported, and understood. It makes me happy to share classrooms with amazing teachers, and I'm proud to be part of Geneva High School. Thank you so much for your dedication and for the positive influence you have on these kids' lives. The difference you're making is invaluable." To me, that's just, again, one little snippet of what it's like to work at Geneva Community High School. Speaking of community, I have bragged for years throughout my career when I'm with administrators or other colleagues from other school districts, or when we're interviewing prospective teachers. And when someone says, "So what's it like to work at Geneva?" or what can you tell me about Geneva High School? I have always said that the support we receive from our community is second to none. In fact, one of the statements I make almost every time we go to hire a teacher is that our community has extremely high expectations for us, but we are so grateful for the help and the assistance that our community provides in helping meet those expectations. But tonight I just want to highlight some of the things our students and our teachers do to support and promote community within the walls of Geneva High School and also within the boundaries of our school district, along with, at times, the greater community outside the school district. For example, our science department hosts a second grade science day in the fall for Harrison Street School students, and we are currently working on a second opportunity for Heartland Elementary School students. Our horticulture classes collaborate with Western Avenue Elementary School to help with their community garden. Our AP and environmental science and biology teachers and students attend the Battle of Brush Piles coordinated by the Kane County Natural Resources Committee. We also have family and consumer science students in our child development classes who run a preschool for preschool-age children each semester. We have our music students who, the band, choir, and orchestra all partnered with our Leos and Lions Club and performed at our Lions Club pancake breakfast in our cafeteria in early December. And it's one of the highlights of that. Obviously, for the little ones who come to see Santa Claus, that's the highlight. But for parents of those kids, they just rave about our music students and how great it is to have them present for that event. We have business students in marketing classes that have a pizza challenge every year and partner with Aurelio's Pizza and then donate the money that they raise. Our art and family and consumer science students and teachers have, for the last 2 years, had what they call an empty bowl fundraiser. Ceramic students make bowls in their ceramics class, and our family and consumer science students make 5 or 6 different types of soups, and they invite the community to come to the cafeteria and eat and take a bowl home with them. Just a really neat idea, again, that just promotes community and just really exemplifies what we're all about. In terms of extracurriculars, our boys and girls cross-country teams were very proud to share with me that on an annual basis, they contribute their time to the Fox Valley Marathon. They run a first aid station for runners along the way. They host a 4th and 5th grade mile run every year for students in our community. And they volunteer at the Chicago Marathon every October. Finally tonight, I'd like to highlight the word respect. It's another thing that I have always been very, very proud of as someone at Geneva High School. It's just amazing to me how kind our students are, how respectful they are of one another, and that's being highlighted this week when we shine a spotlight on the word respect at GHS with our first ever Respect Week. And here tonight, she's not going to present anything, but I want to make sure I give credit to Kayla Swanson. This idea was hers, and it kicked off today with all of our staff members wearing these Respect t-shirts. And we also had some cameo appearances by some of our uniquely abled students on our GTV broadcast to kick off the week. And the week culminates with the Pack the Stands basketball game featuring our United Vikings basketball team. And they will be taking on our GHS boys and girls basketball teams. It's a little twist on that game. We've been competing against other high schools throughout the season, but we're going to have what I would call kind of the grand finale of the unified basketball season this Saturday at 4 o'clock, featuring, as I said, our boys and girls basketball teams and our unified team. And tonight, I've asked 2 members of our unified basketball team to just come up and say a few words. I'd like to first introduce Olivia Hagan, who has done a fantastic job of mentoring members of this members of the unified basketball team. So we have to share a microphone, so I'm going to stand over here. Come on up, Olivia. Olivia, if I could just ask you a question. Why did you choose to get involved in the Unified Vikings basketball program?
Well, over the summer, I went to a Young Life church camp, and we have kids with disabilities there as well. And I found myself constantly getting in trouble because I'd be with them the whole time when I'm supposed to be doing other things. And being with them brings me so much joy and happiness, and it's just a judgment-free zone. And knowing that we had this basketball team here at the high school, it was an opportunity because I no longer could only do it during the summer. I could do it every Tuesday or Wednesday of the week, and then tournaments on the weekends. And so being in a judgment-free zone where I can be myself and be with them, it was my favorite part.
What have you gained from being a part of this program this year in its infancy? As it's their first season. What are you taking away from your experience with them?
Seeing how much I can do, even an hour a week, seeing them change from we started in late October, early November, and seeing how far they've come each practice. Before, they didn't know how to shoot, they didn't know the rules of the game, and honestly neither did I because I've never played basketball before. But watching them now, we're going to play a game Saturday, and the last game we had, they were doing everything. They were getting back on defense, and we barely had to remind them. And seeing how much they've changed, and not only like their relationships with the other kids on their team and us as like the coaches, it's been special to create bonds with them and just overall see how they've excelled as players on the court.
That's great. The next person we'd like to call up to the podium, and Olivia is going to ask Pablo a couple of questions. Pablo Drab, a member of our Unified Vikings team.
Pablo, what's your favorite part about basketball?
I like dribbling.
You like dribbling? Who do you like to play with on the team? Who's your favorite?
I like Kendall.
You like Kendall? And you like shooting?
Yes, I love it.
You score a lot of points, right?
It was awesome.
Yes. How many points? You score a lot every game.
40.
Yeah. He has scored. Let's see. You've done a good job, right?
Oh, yes.
Are you excited for our game on Saturday?
Sure.
You are. The stands? All of the... Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Space Jam.
Thank you, Pablo. Good job. Good job. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you to Olivia and Pablo for coming out tonight and representing their team. If you are looking for something uplifting that will put a smile on your face literally for hours and hours, in my opinion, come on out at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. It will be unforgettable, I promise. And everybody at school is looking forward to it on Saturday. And as I said, Kayla is the architect of Respect Week, but Kayla is our Special Olympics, essentially athletic director. She came to us with a proposal last year to put this team together. And honestly, we said yes, but we thought we were just going to take little baby steps. But this thing has just taken off, and it is a phenomenal addition to our programs at Geneva Community High School. So thanks to Kayla for all of that. In keeping with that theme of respect also, and one thing that Olivia didn't mention, she's a junior. Students have an opportunity to take a PE class called, they can be PE leaders and work not only with some of the uniquely abled students in our VOC-X program, an instructional program, but also for those of you who are unaware, we have Mid-Valley special education students in our building as well, and they have been in our building for many, many years, and we have a great partnership with them also, and they take adaptive physical education in our building, and our PE teacher provides opportunities for our high school students to work with those students as well. And Mr. Hennig, our PE department chair, wanted me to share kudos to 2 GHS students that he is particularly proud of who work as peer leaders. He said he wanted to acknowledge Brennan Anson and Kate Wood, who serve as peer leaders for our adaptive PE class at GHS. Brennan and Kate and the other peer leaders go above and beyond each day to create meaningful opportunities for our students to learn, move, and participate in various activities. Their dedication and impact on our students deserves to be celebrated. This would be a wonderful, and he's just so thrilled to be able to highlight them. And Mrs. Forney is our adaptive physical education teacher. She does a phenomenal job with those students as well. Again, as Scott mentioned, creating just lots of meaningful opportunities for our regular ed and uniquely abled students to work together on a daily basis. One thing I'd like to highlight about Respect Week is while we've focused tonight on the relationship that we have with our uniquely abled students, Kayla and I think, were featured on GTV today with a couple of sound bites, and I think we both shared a common message that this week is not just about the relationship that we want to build and continue to grow with our uniquely abled students, but what I stated is that I think it's so important to recognize that Geneva High School consists of students who are all different shapes and sizes and colors and varying degrees of ability, and we want to make sure that we're respecting and recognizing all of those differences and being respectful of all of those differences as we work our way through each school year. And again, as I said earlier, I'm very proud of how we consistently do that. This is not something that we think we need to necessarily create. There's not a problem that this Respect Week is addressing. It's instead reinforcing some great habits that already exist amongst our students and staff at GHS. finally tonight, again in the category similar to the email that I received on Friday, I want to conclude tonight's presentation by introducing you to a young man that I was just introduced to just a week and a half ago. And again, I had no idea that this was coming. It was just a chance encounter between Greg, who I'm going to introduce here in just a second, and I on a Friday afternoon, a week ago this past Friday. During a class period, I was walking down the hall, and Greg and a friend were walking down the hall as well. So I said, "How's it going, fellas?" And they said, "Good." We kept walking, and all of a sudden, Greg stopped and said, "Mr. Rogers, how are you?" Kids will always say, "I'm fine, how are you?" just, to be polite. But the fact that Greg stopped in his tracks, turned around, and specifically said, "Mr. Rogers, how are you?" caused me to stop in my tracks and turn around. And I said, "I'm great, thank you very much." And then Greg, unsolicited, offered some information about Geneva High School that I was just so impressed by. And in the moment, I said, "Well, that's great to hear." And I walked away. 5 minutes later, I thought to myself, wait a minute, a week from Monday, I have to present to the school board. What a great opportunity to introduce a young man who has some amazing things to say about GHS to the board. So at this time, Greg Tarasuk is going to come up. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So Greg, I asked you, I said, when you said to me, "Mr. Rogers, how are you?" I said, "I'm great." And then you, unsolicited, said to me what? What did you say?
Well, I met Mr. Rogers in the hall, and I haven't really talked too much with Mr. Rogers, so it was just like it was a good thing that I saw him in the halls. So I stopped by and I told him, I'm like, I just moved from Vegas, and ever since I moved from Vegas, it's been like this amazing, like the school in general has been amazing compared to what the school that was in Vegas. Like when I went there freshman year, it's just like I never had really goals in my life, and I never felt like the education was there. So when I finally moved here and went to this high school, I felt like what's it called? I actually feel like I have goals, because now it's just like I got my permit already. I'm already listed into Fox Valley Academy Center to take fire science and become a firefighter. Like that's a goal that I'm already wanting to do. And in general, this school, I had expectations for this from the previous school that I just came from, that it wasn't going to be a good school. I was like, it's probably going to be the same. I didn't have any high expectations, but when I came here, the students were nice, the teachers were very welcoming. I feel like they've been really helping me, like on my education. I just feel like in general, overall, everything about this school is just like it's really good, and that's why I stopped Mr. Rogers in that hall, because I was like, you know what, Mr. Rogers, I'm like, I really like this school, and I'm excited to sit here and spend my junior year and my senior year just here and in that school. So it's really amazing. But
we're glad you're here, Greg.
Yeah.
Thanks. I hope you agree with me. I felt that was just an amazing way to conclude this evening's presentation. So thank you very much to these three great students who joined me here tonight. And I don't know if these other presentations have resulted in some questions being asked. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. But I guess I would just conclude that I have a tremendous amount of pride in Geneva High School, and I only chose those three themes tonight. We could go on and talk about all sorts of other things that are great about Geneva High School, but I thought these three things were very timely, and we had some students who could really do a great job of representing what it was we were trying to get across tonight. So thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions?
So, Mr. Rogers, thank you for that opportunity for us to see this. As I was listening, and is it Olivia? Is it right? Yeah. So we have this thing that we hear every now and then. People say, "I feel your pain," and compassion is what they're trying to say. Is that to suffer with? That's compate in Latin. So I can see not only caring, but also that you have students undoubtedly that feel the pain of others and making it come to life. That was just another thing that I saw, not just caring, but a little bit above that, compassion.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Can we cancel our presentation that we had that we have to do next with that? Can we bump that?
No. It's a part of the agenda. But for all you GHS students and what you said, I liked having goals. If you have goals, no matter what your age, you'll do well. I encourage you all to keep having goals for the rest of your life. Having said that, the next thing.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
Somehow everybody figures out they don't really have to stay. Well, that was very interesting. The next item on the is a presentation on middle school enrollment and staffing with Dr. Barrett, Terry Blue, and Dave Carley. And I see Dr. Barrett has made his way to the podium. So we are all waiting your presentation.
All right. Thanks so much. Nice to get to stand over here for once. So this presentation has been a while coming. We've talked about this at several meetings, excuse me, last year and this year. And, you know, the work that we're going to talk about today really started with our middle school team before I even started this role, and started in earnest for me, you know, kind of day one, getting the ball rolling. So I'm going to have an opportunity to talk about some of the big picture ideas behind some of the enrollment and staffing kind of plans and processes we've been working through at the middle school. And then Mr. Carley and Mr. Blue are going to get into the weeds and talk about some of the specifics from the middle school level and some of the things they've been working on with their staff. So, you know, from a big picture perspective and from the district perspective, you know, we put a lot of work into our strategic plan last year and developing our strategic plan. You know, this updated mission, vision, and values all came, you know, was a part of that process. And that really led to 4 key goal areas, right, that, you know, we've talked about a lot: our enrollment and staffing, college and career pathways that we just heard Greg talking about, you know, cultural competencies, which I think we just heard some about, and our community engagement, also, which I just think we kind of heard some about. What we're here to talk about tonight really falls into this first area of enrollment and staffing, right? So, you know, kind of 2 overarching goals within that enrollment and staffing band are reviewing and kind of right-sizing our staffing with our enrollment trends, reviewing our master schedules and how we are staffed for that, and then evaluating our demographic study and looking at our staffing and our facility capacity, right? We've talked a lot about the demographic study already this year, and I'm going to get into that here in a minute, but it's really these, you know, these 2 areas that kind of drive that work, right? We've had enrollment changes. We've tried to evaluate what that enrollment is going to look like long term with our demographic study. And now we're kind of taking that next step. So as you'll recall, we did the demographic study. We got district projections over the course of, you know, theoretically for the next 10 years. And the meta message in this, we've talked about it before. I don't need to go too far into the weeds, but the meta message is our enrollment has been declining for some time, right? And there's a lot of factors that go into that, lower birth rates, more folks aging in place, things like that. But our enrollment as a district has, you know, declined over the last 10, 15 years. And then what our projections tell us is that we're going to level out and be pretty stable over the next 10 years, okay? When we look at that at the middle school level, obviously we've also seen those numbers come down. And what we see happening is over the next several years, those numbers are going to continue coming down, right? And then they'll kind of come back up a little bit and level out. Now, the important thing to think about, and we may have talked about this before, the reason those numbers are coming down is just because we have smaller cohorts of students matriculating through the district, right? And I'll show you some of those numbers here in a minute, but that's why. It's not that we are losing students, it's not that students are leaving the district or anything like that, right? But it's that the group of 8th graders is bigger than the group of 7th graders, and that's bigger than the group of 6th graders, and so on all the way down, right? So as those groups kind of matriculate through the system, you're going to see those numbers come down at the middle school level. So again, what's the challenge that we're trying to work through here? Again, it's that declining enrollment, and it's a national trend, and it's a Geneva trend. And then at the middle school level, that challenge is combined with the middle school model, how you staff a middle school. And when you combine those two things, what you basically have is you've got fewer students, but if you don't change the model, you have fewer students going into the same number of sections, right? So or the same number of classrooms, basically, right? Same number of teachers. So fewer students going into the same number of sections or same number of teachers. And that's really the problem we're trying to figure out here. So again, beginning almost right away last school year, we began reviewing some of this enrollment data. We didn't have the demographic study information yet, but we started talking about these trends because they were already there, right? We already knew how many elementary kids we had. We already knew how many kids we had in 2nd grade, for example. And we started talking with the middle school faculty, and I, came over to the middle schools. We pulled the whole campus together, and I talked with them all, and we had some conversation. We talked about the challenges that, this situation meant for us. We talked about different potential solutions we could look at, and we've tried to maintain ongoing discussions at the campus level with a representative group of faculty. And also, Dave and Terry have spent a lot of time talking with individual faculty members and talking with their faculty as well. They'll talk a little bit more about that. So big idea here when we're talking about what we're going to do to address some of this challenge. And you've probably heard this from me before too when we've talked about some things. We need a model that is 3 things, right? We need a model that is reasonable. It maintains sensible class sizes and staffing levels, while taking care to make sure we're supporting and keeping our current awesome educators, right? Reasonable is an important target here. There's no goal. We can't have super small class sizes. We can't have super big class sizes, right? We don't want to be, you don't want to run too tight or too lean. We want this thing to be reasonable, and we also want to make sure we're supporting and keeping all of our awesome middle school educators who are currently here, right? We also want a system that is equitable and strives for consistent experiences and appropriate experiences across the campus and across the district, right? And that's something we've talked a lot about. We don't want a system where one school has a very different experience than the other. We're trying to actually bring that together more, right? And you'll hear about some of that. Not just today, but in plenty of our work in the future. So we want to make sure that those experiences are equitable, and also equitable and appropriate with our other levels, right? We don't want the middle school to get, say, too out of whack with the elementary or the high school, right? And then last, sustainable. So reasonable, equitable, and sustainable. We need to make a change. The system that's currently in place has been in place for a long time, decades, right? That is sustainable. We don't want to make any changes that would require drastic upheaval in the future if some other changes happen. You recall earlier this year, we talked a lot in some board meetings about the potential of a large new development happening out west. That didn't come to fruition necessarily, but as we talked about at that time, it could, right? Sometime it could come to fruition. And we want a system that's sustainable so that if we make these adjustments now to address our challenge, that we don't put ourselves in a pickle if a year from now they say there is going to be a neighborhood and there's going to be all sorts of new kids. We would have to, blow something up. We don't want to do that. So those are the kind of three big idea goals here. So here's one way to think about this. We have a model designed right now to support what we would call 20 sections and 4 teams of students at the middle school level. If you think about, at say 6th grade, right, we've got white and blue at each of our 2 buildings. And each of those teams is basically made up of 5 core teachers, right? So when you put all those kids in those classes, you've basically got 5 sections per team, 2 teams per building. That's 20 sections, right? That's how that model is currently designed. And again, this system has worked well, and it's worked well for a long time, going back 20 years when we had about 500 kids per grade level, right? The good thing about having all those sections is you could disperse those kids out through those sections in a pretty equitable way. But as our enrollment continues to decline, again, if we don't change the model, what we're looking at is we're having fewer and fewer students transition into that same number of sections. And so here's a way to look at this, right? Remember, when this model was constructed, at its peak, we had about 500 kids. That sounds right, Mr. Blue, right? Yeah, about 500 kids per grade level going into those 20 sections. Now, with the decline we've seen over the last decade or so, you see that number at the middle school is more around 400, right? You see 413 8th graders. That's how many 8th graders we currently have. 402 7th graders. 408 6th graders. And then you see as we get down to elementary, you see those numbers drop again, right? So now you're looking at 345, 353, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got fewer and fewer kids going into the same number of sections. So I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Carley here. He's going to talk a little bit about what that would mean, and then we're going to get into some of the plans we have.
Thank you, Dr. Barrett. During the spring of 2003, middle school administrators presented the current chart that you see on the board to our faculty and staff regarding possible class sizes. If we look at the 3rd grade class, which is now our current 5th grade class on campus, the class average would be about 18 or so in a 20 section campus. As we looked and we started talking and planning for the future, we knew we had to do some reduction and reducing of sectioning over the next few years. Where we've been. Since 2006, when our second middle school was established, we had about 20 sections per grade level here on the middle school campus. That represented, as Mr. Barrett said, 10 sections per school. Those 10 sections were split into 2 teams, a blue and a white, at each grade level. With the declining enrollment and looking at the sectioning at the elementary schools, building, district, and GA representatives of the administration and leadership met and understood that we needed to do something and create a plan to decrease the sectioning at the middle schools. So last school year, in 23-24, I'm going to send a lot of years to you guys, Middle School South went down to 9 sections at the 6th and 7th grade, okay, using retirements that occurred the year before. Going into the current school year, last spring, Middle School North had 3 retirements. So North decreased our sectioning at all grade levels to 9 sections. To continue this plan in the upcoming fall, next year, Middle School South will be going down to 9 sections at 8th grade, making all grade levels at both middle schools even at 9, and a total of 18 sections on campus from 20 to 18. Next slide. Looking at the 25-26 school year, we will be removing the team label blue and white at the 6th grade level. All incoming 6th graders will be on a grade level team. We'll be keeping the blue and white team name only at the 7th and 8th grade level for 1 additional year. The purpose of this change is to allow time for our staff and administration to learn new routines and supports and establishing meeting schedules to support our students. With that change, we are still looking to keep student classes within the grade level area, but there are a few outliers that will occur. In the upcoming school year, 26-27, Middle School South will have 3 retirements. So their scheduling will move down to 8 sections per grade, and North will stay the same with 9. Currently, we're meeting with our exploratory staff on campus, our FACS, art, tech, and languages, and we'll be planning to move back to semesters instead of trimesters during this school year, the 26-27 school year. Mr. Blue?
All right, so how does eliminating the teams impact the schools? Well, we've been doing teams for a long time, and so a lot of the things we have developed and created have been based on that idea. And so we're kind of going to have to take a step back, look at all of our structures and say, okay, what do we do for MTSS, which is how we support kids and identify different interventions and support. How do we schedule kids? I mean, I've been hitting the go button on blue and white for a long time, and now I'm not sure what I'm going to do with myself without that little complication. A lot of our internal functioning, like, I'll get on the announcement and be like, okay, 6 blue kids, I need you here right now. 6 white kids, I need you there right now. And everybody just knows what to do. Now we're going to just have to think of even though that's kind of seems like a silly small thing, some things are just automatically thought of in that regard. So we're going to take a step back. And, we're not the only schools around who are going to hover in that 500 to 600 kid zone. There's lots of schools that have about that many kids who basically treat their grade levels as one mega team. Truth be told, when I started here many, many moons ago, no, it wasn't. That's why they hired me. I was really young. I grayed out nice and early for the interview process. It was like 2002. And we had 3 teams at the middle school level. We're just shy of that 1,500 number. So one of those teams had about 160 or 170 kids on it. At the end of the day, we're going to have about 170, 180 kids at a grade level. So, we functioned, that team was functional, okay? And so we can function just like that team did by having one mega team at the grade level. So what will the community notice? Well, if all goes well, not a heck of a lot. I shifted down to 9 sections last year, and North did at 6 and 7. North did 6, 7, 8 this year, and nothing seems broken from our feelings. So we're trying to look at everything we do and say, what can we make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks? It's going to be little things like, it used to be, you call a team point person to schedule a meeting with the teachers on your team. Well, that'll probably fall into what our guidance counselors help to do, or what the administrator of the grade level helps to do, and say, okay, we'll get a team meeting together and it'll just be the teachers of that kid instead of all the extra teachers that are on the team. Those of you who've had kids at the middle school level, if you remember that far back, you'd come for locker setup night, and we had it really easy, right? We just say, you had 6 white or 6 blue, and I just point up for that way or that way, and I'd say, it's up there, don't worry, you'll figure it out. Now it's going to be like, okay, well, your kid might have a class on what we currently call 6 white, and then a next class on what we currently call 6 blue. But you've been in our building, the walk from one place to another is not that great. I think it might walk as many steps to get to your office from here. So these are little things that'll just, once we start doing it, nobody's even going to remember that we did it another way. So I think that's there's a lot of little things we're going to have to pick up and notice along the way. So we're going to have to be very much paying attention to all the little nuances, but we're not fearful of the change. So then the story ends in 27-28 when North drops to 8 sections. So at that point, they got a few more retirees a year before. We should be able to land where we both land at 8 sections. And then that's based on the data. That's where the story ends for probably a while, probably while I'm here at least. And then once it's coming back up, I'm running because I want to see it go down. I don't need to see it come back up. But that should stabilize us for quite a while. And the community really shouldn't notice much different between 26, 27, and 27, 28, because by then we'll have worked out most all the bugs. And now you might be saying, okay, but what about the class sizes? How is this going to impact those class sizes? So this is what we would predict, is that most classes, by the time we hit that 8 and 8 sections, most average class sizes will be between 22 and 24. And these numbers are, for us, they're usually pretty accurate in terms of, we always say, if we say the average is 22, that means our biggest class will probably be 24 and our smallest class will probably be 20. Like we play plus or minus 2 in the scheduling game at the middle school level. So you can see those are very reasonable, and I think you talked about reasonable, was reasonable the word? Reasonable numbers. And like Dr. Barrett said, we can go back to like how it was when I started here in 02. Class averages were 29, 30 kids. Not because we wanted them that way, it was because we didn't have the space to do anything else. And that's why the board many years ago built North. And so now we have the wiggle room to have it so we can actually have the appropriately sized classes for a middle school. Because you get too much smaller, you lose some dynamics, and you get too much bigger, you lose that middle school feel. So we'll still feel like a middle school, it just won't have teams. Okay? Dr. Barrett?
Yeah, I think that's the key message, what Terry just ended with, right? I mean, this is still going to feel like the great environment that middle schools in Geneva feel like. And, I've got to give kudos to these guys, also huge kudos to the staff at the middle school and, their representatives who've sat and talked through so much of this work. This is going to require some change for them, obviously, right? And some folks have already made some change and started to adapt. Change is hard for everybody. So, that's part of why this through attrition thing has been so important and making this change over time. So that's kind of where this is at for now. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question. So I know sorry, Larry. Did I cut you off? I think you talked a lot about what the community impact what they might notice, some of the logistical impact, but I don't hear anything about the students. So like from an academic perspective, from a social perspective, from an emotional perspective, I know that we do middle school as teams for a reason. Like there's been a lot of studies and research around how we should treat and teach kids age 11 to 14. And this sounds more like a junior high, almost high schoolish kind of way of going about things. So what does that look like for our students, or how are we thinking about what this transition might mean for them academically, socially, emotionally?
I'll take a crack and then you can fill in. When you think of the whole concept of the teams concept is about taking a big school and breaking it down, making it feel smaller for the kids. And over time, we've gotten smaller just by the natural flow of things, as Dr. Barrett described. So, kids feeling connected to their teachers is super important. That's what that small team feel is all about. Having kids exposed to lots of different opportunities is something that middle school is all about. So our exploratory program, for example, is something that, other schools, instead of having like everybody be exposed to some of the similar opportunities, have kids pick at like 6th grade. You got to pick between this and this, and if you don't pick that, you'll never see it again. For us, we build our exploratory program to allow lots of opportunities for kids. They get a little bit of art, a little bit of music, a little bit of facts, a little bit of STEM. Those are things that are important in a middle school model, is to give those opportunities. And those opportunities aren't going to change. They go from trimester to semester, but otherwise they don't really change. So we're hoping that just that small feel will just exist in a different way.
I would add, I was having this conversation with some folks the other day. I mean, I think it is important to note that a big part of the team concept is the relationship the teachers have with the kids. And I think, as Terry kind of mentioned earlier, our teachers are great at that. And that won't, shifting some of these things about the model won't change how our teachers have great relationships with kids. From a functional or structural standpoint, I think important to be explicit about the fact, so what will look different for kids, and this is also what will look different from teachers, and that's what they're working through at the middle school campus. Right now, all the kids on a team have the exact same 5 teachers for every, right? So all the kids on 6 White, or not even right now, but theoretically in its pure form, right? All the kids on 6 White have the same social studies teacher, and all those kids go around that same social studies teacher. All the kids have the same math teacher and rotate around. In this model, that will not be as pure. And so there will be some teachers who are either teaching multiple content areas within their same grade, like a elementary school teacher, right? Depending on their licensure and their experience and what it is they would want to teach. So there might be a teacher on a 6th grade team who's teaching some science and some math, for example, to those kids. Or there might be some teachers who teach the same content area, but at a different grade, right? And so that means if you take all the 6th graders, they'll still be grouped together. Their exploratories will be together. Their PE will be together. Their lunch will be together the way they always are. And many of their academic classes will all be with similar peers. And that's what some of what these guys will be working on. So, you know, those kids might be together in like groups, but it might be a teacher who is different for a class or 2 within that model. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you have this now.
Yeah. So at Middle School North, I currently have a math class, 6th grade math class, that students from 6 Blue or 6 White come over and work with a 6 Blue math teacher for one section. We've done it since the beginning of the year, and it's been fine. Again, it's those communication between the teachers, with administration, and throughout meetings that we're working on, and it's going well. And the kids, because we're all up on the 2nd floor, it's not that big of a change for the kids. I also have a 6th grade math teacher, A&E, a teacher that's a 7th grade teacher. So 6th graders come down the stairs and go to the 7th grade for one class period, and it's worked out well. And we haven't had any problems yet. So it's about the communication between the teachers, administrators, and making sure that we're keeping an eye on our students like we do.
So I think that part of the middle school model is it lends to like some communication, or the middle school team model, it lends to communication about your students, because theoretically all 5 teachers share all the same students. So those teachers meet once a week, twice a week, and then they don't just talk about, oh, my subject, but here's what I'm seeing with this student across these subjects. And I think that we've identified some good needs, like whether it was like developing the ALAP program or different things that came out of those types of structures. Have we thought about how this new model, like how would those teachers meet to be able to have those same discussions and foster that same ownership of students when we're expanding our team size?
How would I envision this working out? And again, we say words like envision because we haven't done this before. But like right now, at the 8th grade level, for example, in both schools, there's a team that's off 2nd period and they meet, a team that's off 3rd period and they meet. And I would envision that we would still have people who are off 2nd period and people who are off 3rd period, and they're meeting and talking about kids. And we would need to use like a conduit of like the administrator of the grade level and the counselor of the grade level, who we meet with those teams every other week, and as a way of saying, okay, here's what we heard from this group of teachers. Here's Johnny, Joey, Freddie. We got to work on and got to talk about. You guys have them for your classes. You know, these 2nd period teachers have those 3. You 3rd period teachers, you have those 3. Now let's work out, what are we missing? What do we got to do? So it's those opportunities to meet can still exist. It just won't necessarily be for every kid. All of a sudden, all my teachers in the room together, but the appropriate staff members, like the administrators, like the school counselors, can make those connections for the teachers. And it's also part of like looking at our teaming structures of team meeting structures. Like maybe one of those our monthly after school meetings is a whole group meeting to take care of some of those things too. So it's going to be different. We're going to have to communicate differently with each other, but we got the staff to do it because we already have like our MTSS structure built into what we do. So we're going to have to do a good job of scheduling teachers into appropriate groups so we can make sure that communication works out. And if there's an oddball teacher who can't make to one of those, then it's going to be, okay, how do we include their input about the kids the right way into the process? So that's kind of what we envision probably is the end result. We're not sure how difficult that is, but we love a challenge. So we know what we want to do.
Yeah, just a couple comments and then maybe a question. First off, I greatly appreciate the fact that you both are looking 5 years out because this is not an event. This is a wave. And I know it sounds kind of trite, but if you're not on top of the wave, you're getting crushed by the wave. And the only way that we're going to be ready for this is to be talking about it, thinking about it, trying different things now, because when we really do get to the low spot of the number of students that we have to be ready for that, and we have to be good stewards also of our taxpayers' money. And I appreciate you working with the certified staff and working it through attrition. Normal attrition that would come. I'm also very pleased to see that the first focus is with the students and how it impacts the students and how are we going to make sure that we maintain the level of education that we have delivered in the past going forward. And I really am complimentary on how well you all are doing there. So now I'm going to ask the tough question. And probably you know where I'm coming with this. The non-certified administrative staff, that also, I believe, over a period of time is going to have to be shared amongst the two middle schools. Today, I'm not sure how much sharing there is of some of the administrative staff that you have, but as we continue to go down, I think that's going to be something you're also going to have to look at, some kind of consolidation. The work can be done at North for both North and South and in certain administrative things. So if you haven't started to think about that, now is the time to start thinking about where you want to go with that. So I'd like to hear any direction you have for issues that are outside the certified staff in that area.
Yeah, good question and fair question. So first point to note is that has started as well. You may be aware that there's one shared administrator who currently works between two buildings. It was not like that a few years ago, and that was reduced and shared. And some of that work, I mean, he has an office at both buildings, but you're right. Some of that work, he might be sitting at North and doing some of the work for South, or vice versa. So, that is something that has already happened, and we've started to implement. Certainly, something we'll keep an eye on, as we will with at any level in the district. As we're keeping an eye on this enrollment thing. I would also share. We haven't talked about this that much, but as we talk about that staffing piece, just for context, because I do think this is true. I think our district is pretty conservative with our administrative staffing compared to, I think, a lot of other districts. I don't think we're overstaffed with administrative staff in terms of roles that we have. So I think we're starting from a good place on that, I guess, is what I'm saying. So fair enough for now? Okay.
Dan, did you have a question?
Yeah, so mine is pretty basic in terms of and coming from a parent. So every August for as a middle school parent, we would open it up and home access and say, okay, Yezi's in 6W this year. We know the teachers that are in that. So going forward, coming in August, when we open up team access as a parent, we're going to see social studies this teacher, period 1, math this teacher. Is that the way that it would come out?
Yes, but there will be greater joy in your voice when you say that. Because what you will not be doing is your child will not be contacting every child they know in Geneva to find out if they're on 6 white or if they're on 6 blue. Because I love middle school teams, but the one thing I do not love is that day, because you have a lot of kids who are upset over really what is nothing. Because when they all go to lunch, they're all together. You know, they have lots of opportunities. They're together. They were like that when they were on teams. They'll be like that when they're not on teams. But we all will not have that day anymore where I hit the button and I run and hope nobody's going to call me over the weekend. So that's what'll look different.
I think another thing to think about with that, Dan, is in practice, that's a little bit of what's happening right now with some of the changes they've already started to make through attrition. So what might have happened in practice this year on that day is 2 kids might have gone into home access and seen 6 white, but maybe they didn't have the exact same teachers already, because we already, some of those changes were already made. So it said 6W, but because we had to adjust some of that staffing already, they might not have had all the exact same teachers. And so, when they talk about how part of this is a lot of this might just be in name only, like you might just be taking out the W, but in practice, it's going to feel largely the same for kids. I think that goes back to Stephanie's question too. I think once people see and experience this, and kids experience this, I don't think it's going to be as a significant of a change as it might feel like. So, fair enough? Okay.
After.
I just want to make a comment. I was looking back at the number of students per grade, and it's hard right now to imagine having one section per grade, especially for those who've had your students already go through middle school. But the numbers are there. They show that it really will feel the same way as 6 white does now in 3 years, because you'll just be 6 and it'll be almost the same number of students. So I think you're right in that we just have to kind of trust, and we'll see what it's like, and we can't look at it from our experiences that we've had in middle school, because it is going to be quite different. And getting ahead of it now and thinking about it and making those plans, even starting already to reduce the number of sections, is showing that it can work, and that I think that our students will be okay. They'll get through, because it'll be almost the same number of kids that they're around.
Yeah, and I think your point is well taken there too, Jackie. When we looked at those, the potential class size numbers, I mean, one of the things you're looking at in there is, we've talked about this, and we actually spent some time, the elementary class size committee, developing kind of target elementary class sizes that we thought were important to establish in the district. And if you'll remember, one of the things we talked about was saying that at the primary level, kindergarten, 1st grade, that those should be our smallest class sizes, right? For those kids who are learning, just learning school and everything. And so we established those kind of target class sizes. And when you look at some of those numbers, if we didn't make any change, you'd be looking at middle school classes, in some cases significantly smaller than our targets for kindergarten. And so, everyone, we all know, like, that can't work. That can't work. And so that's kind of the impetus for all this good conversation that's happened.
Just one other question. So now that it's going to go from trimesters to semesters, does that mean that we're losing exploratory options, because we currently have 3 exploratory classes?
So you may recall from many years of being in Geneva, up until about 8 years ago, we offered semester courses for the exploratory classes. At 6th grade, it was a semester of art, semester of general music. In 7th grade, a semester back in the day was tech ed, which was like your wood shop and stuff, and facts. And then 8th grade, you had some choice. And we stopped that practice because we couldn't staff it anymore. We needed 2.4 woodshop teachers on campus, and 2 was hard to get. 0.4 got to be impossible as time went on. And so that's why we made the change. And what we did in that change is we increased the amount of art kids got in 6th grade. So it was a trimester of general music and trimester 2D art, trimester 3D art. And in 7th grade, we introduced a class called entrepreneurship. So kids take facts, STEM, and entrepreneurship each for 12 weeks. So basically what we're looking to do is roll back to what we had before, except no woodshop because nobody teaches woodshop anymore. They're just not teachers. There's nobody to hire. So we'll end up doing semester general music again, semester of art. So we're decreasing the amount of art time, but it's because you're going from 2 trimesters down to a semester, but you're increasing the general music time. We're losing entrepreneurship altogether and going back to facts and STEM. And then the 8th grade choices really aren't changing that much. Right now we have a lot of choices because you got to fit them into trimesters. We'll go back down to like a very basic, here's your facts choice, here's your STEM choice, here's your art choice. But it's kind of replicating what we used to do. And the only reason we stopped doing what we used to do is because we couldn't staff it. Now, with this decrease, we can actually staff it because that 0.4 tech ed, 0.4 facts teacher is no longer necessary when you're at 8 sections in each building. So that's why we're going to make that shift. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely makes sense. That was really the only thing I could think of with the switching from trimester to semester, like as the impact. Are there any other impacts that you all see?
When we made that change, we went, that made a change in when we produced grades. And so now we'll fall back to just semester grades is probably the likely outcome. We haven't had conversations yet to determine, do you throw in a quarter grade? We used to do quarter grade and a semester grade. Now with Home Access Center and the way things really operate grade-wise, it's probably just going to likely be a semester grade because that seems to be, that first 9 weeks comes very fast to produce a quarter grade. So I think most of our staff would rather just stick with a semester grade, but we got to finalize that decision.
So how will that, go ahead. How will that work for next year since we'll have 6th graders on the new plan and 7th and 8th graders on the old? We're sticking to trimesters?
Next year's still trimesters, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
For those of us that haven't had children in middle school in quite some time, can you define, for clarification, facts?
Typically, when we get to that point, will be a quarter of sewing.
Family and consumer science.
Family and consumer science? Sorry. I thought you wanted to know the curriculum.
Another acronym.
After the meeting, you come talk to me about the curriculum. I'll lay it out for you.
No, thank you for
We work hard to do
clarification.
no acronyms because it is hard. So, family and consumer science, right? So culinary and, all those great things.
All right. Any other questions? Because I have one myself, but I certainly appreciate the comfort level of having the teams where the teachers just rotate the class and everybody's together. As we all know, there are some classes that don't lend themselves to that approach. And given my background, I have to ask about foreign language teaching in this new setup.
That's one of the 8th grade courses that kids choose. We don't envision any change. When you look at the numbers, for the most part, each building is basically losing about 20 kids at the end of the day per grade level. And so when you look at the percentages, that's going to work out to be, it's I can't remember. I worked out one day, but I can't remember right now, 5% or something along those lines. Not a great, that would be 10% of the kids. So when you look at how many kids are signed up for Spanish and you reduce it by 10%, it's not a giant dive. When you look at number of kids signed up from French, you reduce it by 10%. It's not a giant dive on kid-wise. We don't typically offer a lot of sections of German, a lot of sections of French. So if you reduce it by 1 or 2 kids, you're really not going to change. we're probably still only going to have one class of German, maybe one class of French. So we looked at and same kind of holds true with like the band, choir, and orchestra, right? We got a band with maybe 30 kids in it. If you reduce it by 3 kids, you still got a band of 27 kids. You're not eliminating the band at that point in time. So our band, choir, orchestra programs, we worked with those folks and said, hey, look at the numbers. This is probably how this plays out. We should be okay maintaining status quo on what we offer in both the exploratory at the 8th grade level and our band, choir, and orchestra program, because it's not that the percentage of kids who take that class, you're only reducing again by like 10% or something like that. So it's not a drastic hit compared to the sections we offer, if that makes sense.
Thank you, and bonne chance.
Good. Thank you. I know this was a long one, but this is kind of topic we need to have a lot of time to talk about. And thank you for the good questions. And yeah, please.
Sorry. One of the things that Mr. Ballou and I would like to say is our staff, our faculty and staff, over the last couple of years, we've collaborated with them, met with them, and they're very flexible. They're working through things with us, and they know that what's coming. They've been informed. We're informing them. We're working with them, and we really appreciate how they're working together with all of us. So, and keeping our students first. That's the best thing. So, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys.
And thank you, gentlemen. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Bonnie, did you have any requests for public comments? Would anybody in the audience like to comment at this time? You're welcome. I stand making that offer every month. But anyway, so thank you for that. Legislative updates. Jackie.
I don't really have much of a report. Our elected officials are back in session in the General Assembly. I was able to attend a legislative breakfast last week and heard our local legislators talk about some of the priorities, including looking at Tier 2 pensions as being something that they've been trying to focus on, and how in the world they could even fund something like that. So that's really all I have under legislative updates. Hope to have something more as they move along in the session.
Thank you, Jackie. Next, since Andy really hasn't had enough chance to talk this meeting, we'd like the superintendent's report.
Sorry, having to hear me talk 2 times in a row, no fun. Just a couple important but quick thank yous and a couple pieces of information I thought would be valuable to share based on some recent events and recent conversation. First, last time got the opportunity to thank our O&M staff for all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, especially as weather events happen and whatnot. The same thank you goes to our tech team. As you can imagine, in a district this large with all these devices, all these wireless access points, everything that's going on with our network and our firewall and all that stuff. There are a lot of people working behind the scenes and working weird hours to make all that stuff happen. We had a challenge. This was maybe 2 weeks ago where the network wasn't working right as school started, and the way that team was on top of it, the way they figured it out in the middle of the night, I mean, just they're like working magic to make all this stuff work. And I don't know how the flux capacitor works, but thank goodness they do. And they make that all happen. So we're grateful to them. Also to our transportation team and all that they do to get our kids to school safe and on time and everything. I'm talking with them all the time, and Mr. Johnson over there making sure that everything's working okay, and we're getting ready to go. I know Todd is too, and we're grateful for all that work. And that kind of leads me into the next topic. A big thank you to our transportation team last Tuesday, when it was that cold day and we got kids to school. I thought it might be worth revisiting this plan and talking a little bit through kind of how those decisions are made, because I think it's it's important to have these conversations and have time to reflect on them as well. This is the graphic we've had out for a long time, and it just notes explicitly our number one priority is that in-person learning, and if we think we can do it and do it safely, we're gonna try to do it. We can do a late start, although we know how hard that can be for families and trying to plan. Obviously, we can do an e-learning day, and our teachers are prepared. They would have been prepared, I know, and we would have had an awesome e-learning day last week if we felt we needed to. Of course, last but not least, that last option would be having an emergency day that had to be made up at the end of the year. So when we get to a day like last week, first, I'm sure everybody knows this, but these are difficult decisions, right? These are hard. I'd say probably in the top 5 of things that I think are the worst so far of this role. It's just tough, right? It's tough. You're thinking about a lot of competing challenges and competing interests, and one thing that might be better for some kids or better for other kids. And so it's really hard to think about and process through all of that. But what we're trying to do is focus on safety, capacity, and family impact. So when we're thinking about that, the first thing we're thinking about is, and I'll say largely me because that's where the buck stops, right? So I'll be honest about that. The first thing we're really thinking about is safety, right? Do we think we can get everyone to school safely? When I talk, for example, about our transportation team, that day before I was talking with Mr. Johnson a bunch. Are our buses ready? Are they going to be able to start? Are they, is our fleet good? The answer to all those things is yes. We also think about, what's our capacity to get everybody here? What's our capacity to be able to do in-person learning? Are we going to be able to have staff here? On some bad weather days, you might not be able to get enough staff in to have in-person learning, right? So you think about that kind of thing. And the other thing we also do think about is family impact. For some families, if we called it, some families could stay home, right? Some families that would be difficult and that would be a burden on them. So you try to think about how this could impact all sorts of different families. Then the other piece that comes into play is we kind of think, what's our historical practice been and what are our thresholds and where would we be setting precedents? When it comes to cold, I'll share here candidly and publicly. Historically speaking, when we have those conversations, what you kind of look for is we really need to start thinking about it when air temperature is like a sustained air temperature at -15 during key travel areas and a sustained wind chill temperature at -30 or lower for a sustained amount of time at those key travel areas or key travel times. That's kind of been where that line is, where you start having those conversations. And as you might recall, last Tuesday, it was kind of right there, kind of right on that edge, right? And the other thing you want to think about is a precedent, because anytime you kind of make that decision, that might be foundational or a precedent for the next time something happens. So when our priority is in-person learning, that is one of the things I try to think about. I try to be thoughtful of, well, if it's just not quite as cold this time, does that mean the next time it's there, we should think about closing too? And personally, I hold that in-person learning dear, right? We only get 174 of those, or 175 of those. I want those, don't want to just give them up if we don't have to. We do a lot of talking internally, like I said, talking with the whole team here, and I'll be candid, do a lot of external collaboration. I talk with superintendents in the whole area, and we talk about what's going on and, what are you seeing in your district? What's your capacity? When it comes to cold, that's a harder one because some of those things can be so different, right? It depends on your fleet. What's our fleet compared to another district's? If a district is more rural than us, temperatures could feel very different. So that makes all of that a little bit harder. But we do talk a lot with our colleagues. And the last thing really is trying to make timely decisions about all of this. One of the things we've heard from families is if we're going to make a call, don't do this at last minute because families need time to plan. And so, we were spending most of that day Monday talking about this. So if we did have to make a call, we would have made it early enough. And we're just going to reflect on this. Every time one of these things happens, it's an opportunity to learn and reflect on how we've done things, and we'll continue to do that. Last, I wanted to just jump out of my presentation here and share something briefly from the Illinois School Report Card. And this is actually, the impetus for this was at our last meeting and our Finance Committee meeting. Todd was talking about our district finances. Actually, it was with the audit, I think. And what our district spends on students. And one of the questions came up, I think it was Paul, who said, one thing that would be cool for the board and the community to see is, well, what's the community getting for that money? How does our district perform, in comparison to kind of how much money our taxpayers are paying? And the thing that's cool, when he said that, I was like, well, that data is out there on the Illinois School Report Card. Anyone who hasn't been there, it's a great place to go, and you can see a lot more than just this. But there's a lot of great data there. So I'm going to jump out of this and just show it to you here real quickly. So let's see, should be right. So here it is, for example. So you can look up how school districts perform related to our peers around the state. In a variety of areas and based on a variety of criteria. So, to the question that was asked explicitly, how does our district perform in relation to kind of how much money we spend per student? Well, this is what this graph shows you. So right here, I've got the SAT pulled up, right? So the SAT, that's the test that our high school students take. That's kind of like the culminating measure of our academic performance in the district. And this is last year's data. And we're looking at SAT data in relation to our per pupil expenditure. So how do we perform? That's here along, the left side here. That's along this axis. What's our overall percent of proficient students on the SAT, okay? And then along the bottom, you see what our per pupil expenditure is. So obviously, as you go up on the side, that means more kids being proficient on the SAT. And as you go across the bottom, that means more money spent per student, right? So Geneva is the red dot right here. So if you go into the school report card and search by our school, you can look at any of these scatter plots based on their home school. So here's Geneva is the red triangle. What you can see here is Geneva is performing about as high on the SAT as just about any district. This is all the unit districts in the state, by the way. All the unit districts like ours. So that's districts that are, K or pre-K 12. So if you see how we compare here, and each of these dots is another school district in the state. So the point to kind of answer the question that Paul asked is, we're getting pretty good bang for our buck here in Geneva. So there are a few schools high. I won't. If you hover on them, it'll say who they are. I won't. You can go do this on your own if you'd like. There's a few school districts that perform higher than us or slightly higher than us. But anybody over to the right from our red triangle, that's a district that spends more money than us per student. And so when you look at here, there's just a handful of schools who spend as much or less than us that are performing better than us on that measure. Now you can look at this at a variety of different measures, and you can look at this in terms of a variety of different data. You can look at low-income students. You can look at this a lot of different ways, but it is a very helpful way to look at some of this data and to see how our school is performing. So I thought it'd be helpful to show this to our community and say, hey, we're doing pretty good and getting a pretty good bang for our buck that way. Answer that question that was asked, and also just point this out as a good place to go look if you're looking to get some data about our district. So that's all I got today. Any questions or thoughts? Yeah, or anything I shared.
Yeah, just had a question. So as you get together about these cold days, it's just my observation of just living in Mill Creek. As a bicyclist, I know that from Pressinger Recreation Center, going downhill, the temperature drops about 4 degrees. I mean, it's a fact. Even when I leave home, I know that if I look at the probe on my car, by the time I get to the intersection of Fabian, it's going to be the coldest. As I go uphill, the temperature rises. So do you look at individual stations like in Mill Creek? Because the different weather stations in different areas.
Absolutely, and I'm even weird. Like I'll drive around.
Yeah.
I'll drive around and see what it says in my vehicle. And we do check what it's like in each of those different locations, and that's part of talking with our peers. Part of that conversation, right? And that's part of why. I mean, I'll tell you, I agree with you. I remember a lot of Mill Creek bus duty days as principal where I was like, I know it is not this cold at Western.
Right.
So yeah, you're right.
Right, because now I don't know what they use. I mean, Weather Underground, for example, shows you a map of all these different reporting stations, especially Mill Creek and others. What do you use?
Yeah, I usually go between Weather Underground, WeatherBug, AccuWeather are the three that I'm looking at the most.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a comment about the day we had the other day. I appreciated not just that, we're doing better with getting communication out there early, but you also got communication out there saying, hey, we're still going to have school. So it wasn't just about the cancellation, but it was nice for people to know because one, for, the children in my house who wouldn't stop asking me every 5 minutes, but also I know there are parents who are looking to try and make plans for the next day. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, good. You know what? I'd be interested in feedback from folks on this too, here and anybody. We struggle with that. Our default practice on that has been, we're not sending out a district communication unless there's a change of what people are expecting. So people may have noted, well, there was a post, but there wasn't a district email. That was intentional. Because our worry is, again, back to that precedent piece, our worry is setting a precedent or establishing a situation where folks are like, well, you didn't tell us we had school today. Well, yeah, because it's the day we're supposed to have school, and we can't tell you every day we're supposed to have school. That one was one of the hard, we split the difference with the social media posting because that was a hard one because some districts were calling it and some weren't. Typically, it's more unified than that, right? Candidly, typically, it kind of everybody's doing it or nobody's doing it, and so that communication part is easier. And if nobody's calling it, then you don't need to send a message out because nobody out there has heard that any other district has called it. When some have and some haven't, that's where we struggle with that. So we felt like that social media move was kind of the right middle ground for people. We're a little afraid that was establishing a precedent that now the question is, how cold is too cold that we have to tell people we are coming to school, right? But hopefully that was helpful for folks at least.
Yes, I'd like to comment on the Illinois report card.
Yes.
I greatly appreciate you putting that out there. I mean, and I mentioned it to you last time after the meeting that it would be, I think, beneficial. As a community member, we are at times within the community, whether it's at a block party or whether you're with a group of friends at one of the local breweries or whatever. And when they find out you're on the school board, the first thing they want to talk about is taxes, right? And how much taxes they're paying. And, it's very hard at times, sometimes if you don't have the information or where we can send them for the information. And this is, I think, very good to know. And I would encourage the board to continue to emphasize this and put this out there for people because it's nice to be able to say, look, go here and look, right? And compare us with other districts. And I know nobody wants to talk about other districts, and I understand that. But I mean, we are here about Geneva, and I think we should be very proud of what we deliver and for what it costs us to deliver. Because if you look at it, there's a state average, and we are below the state average for the unified school districts. But yet our returns for that, if I can use that term, are quite impressive. So thank you for putting that out. And I would encourage whoever is going to watch this or other people that bring it up to the board members, this is a good resource where you can actually talk facts.
Well, I'm glad when you asked that question, I thought, oh, I know somewhere that answer is already. So,
So, Andy, now, I mentioned this some time ago about if one went to Geneva High School and they wanted to know more about, the performance at school, is there a link to the high school for something? Would that make it easier for the public?
for sure, and this is linked on our website. The school report card is linked on our website. But the Illinois school report card, I've shared candidly in meetings. There are plenty of frustrations that come from the state level and some of the expectations on us and some of the way things change and unfunded mandates and all that stuff. I'm going to give props to this. I think this is a good tool. I think it's very slick. I think it's easy to look at. I think it's easy to navigate, and it has a lot of data on it. I could maybe come back and share different pieces of the school report card at later meetings. I go into it all the time to look up stuff quickly, both for our district or for other districts, because it's a great place to it's not just academic stuff. You can look up, our finances. You can look up attendance, how we compare on it has a lot of good data in here. So I'll give the state props on this, that this is a valuable tool. And you can look up each school individually as well, right? Yeah.
So I guess a short way to say that would have been we're spending a little less than average, and only a couple of school districts are performing at our level.
We're doing good.
Board dialogue topics and pending action consideration. We have 2 policy updates, and you have seen these before. These policies have been reviewed by the administration and the policy committee. They were presented for the first reading January 13th and are being presented at this time for the second reading and adoption. Questions may be addressed to the policy chair. Anyone have anything that they'd like to ask about these? In case, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Next, we have work study topics, future action consideration. Only one item there, the 2025-26 board meeting calendar draft. And these meeting dates are in alignment with last year's calendar. No need to discuss that. Information-wise, item 9, a board meeting presentation schedule. That's in the policy coming up. FOIA request, suspension report, and the 25-26 budget calendar. And this is really for information only. Discussion is not required, but if anybody has any questions, we'll try. Onward. The consent agenda, my favorite part. Personnel report, resignations, retirements, leave requests, changes in assignment FTE, new hires. Item 2, monthly financials. Item 3, gifts, grants, and requests. $1,239.40, Special Olympics Illinois, GHS Special Olympics uniforms and basketballs. Item 4, gift grants and bequests, $1,000 from the Humpke Group for the GHS Robotic Club. Item 5, gift grants and bequests, $7,012.77 from the Geneva Music Boosters for wish list requests. And if you're unfamiliar with that, the music departments at each school submit what they would like, and the Music Boosters attempt with great success and with our gratitude as well to provide those needs and wants. So that is that. Questions?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Item 11, board member comments and reports. Dan, would you like to start?
Sure, you bet. First of all, I want to apologize for not being at the board retreat this past weekend. Sound like a lot of things got done. It was good to read the minutes and all things that were accomplished during that time. So, so that's first. And second, love the presentations today. I thought they were all very good. And especially the middle school, I think that's a tough topic to embark on, and the way they the way that it was explained and the reasonings behind, thought that it was very thoughtful and it was really good. The only comment I had, the last thing is on the cold day, and this might be rumor, but I hear that there were for the high school students that have to park way out in Burgess, I think there was a shuttle service that was moving back and forth. So that was really wonderful. That so those students didn't have to walk all the way from Burgess to the high school. So I think our a lot of things that we heard tonight about our high school being special, and that's just an example of something that maybe didn't get announced or maybe a little bit unnoticed. But I'm glad that something like that was done.
Watch out. Molly.
Yeah, I would echo. These were some really fabulous presentations tonight. As someone who has much younger children, middle school is a foreign concept to me sometimes, so it's great to learn a little bit more and understand the thinking that goes behind these big decisions, and the care that goes into them. To our students that were here tonight, fabulous work, fabulous job. I'm so impressed by everything that was said. I did want to take a minute just to kind of revisit my comments from our last board meeting, and just to remind everyone that our community did lose somebody just a month ago, and there tends to be this kind of typical aftermath of loss where there's a lot of noise immediately after. There's a lot of conversation. People are checking in with each other. It's very fresh on everybody's minds. And then there's this deafening silence that sometimes comes about when everybody returns to their life and things continue forward. And that's natural. That's a part of life. But for some, that silence is so loud internally. So I encourage everyone, again, to continue to check in with one another, ask each other how you're doing, share memories, share stories, keep the memories alive and at the front of our minds, because that silence sometimes comes so quickly and many are not ready for it or not wanting it. There's a lot of friends and family and community members that are still very much grieving this terrible tragedy. So I encourage everyone to just check in with yourselves and reach out for support if and when you need it.
Paul?
Yeah, Molly, that's a great comment. I really appreciate that. Today, I also want to thank our principal at the high school in presenting what makes their school special. I mean, that was very heartening. But also, I want to thank also the two middle school principals for being here. They're thinking strategically, and I think that's needed to make sure that we act in the right tactical way as things happen to us. And if we think it far enough ahead, I think we're heading in the right direction. A couple comments I would make. Been a busy couple weeks here. Theater Boosters, we met right after our last meeting. February 6th and 8th, I'd like to encourage everybody to attend the play that's coming up, Little Women. Tickets are available. Please buy them. This is a little bit unusual because I guess there's a big basketball game on the Friday night. This is only going to be on Thursday and on Saturday, so there will be no performance on Friday. So if you're interested, please come. They'd love to see you there. I went to my first PTO meeting at the high school, and I thought that was really interesting. And again, it's an issue of thinking ahead, and I love it. they're already planning for everything that's going on in the spring. I mean, for them, winter's past and they're already into the spring, and they're working on the post-prom, and they need volunteers. So, and I'm sure the people are going to be reaching out to you. So please, if you have an opportunity or you're just interested, please volunteer for that. And the last comment I'm going to make is it's kind of a funny situation. I went to the PTO meeting at Mill Creek High School. And elementary school, sorry. And only one PTO member, the co-president, showed up. And there was, sitting across from her were two board members, Andy and the principal of the elementary school. And to be honest with you, it was one of the best PTO meetings I was at, because we had a lot of conversation and really had a lot of going back and forth. So I would encourage everybody, if there's an opportunity to attend your PTO, please do. We're there. We're there for answering questions and also to ask you questions. And it can be very valuable, I think, to the folks that attend.
Steph?
Yeah, so thank you to everyone who presented tonight. I love the high school presentation. These are my favorite parts of the board meetings. I think that it's always great to hear about the schools and the things that I feel like I get to experience through having kids at 3 different levels, getting to hear bits and pieces that I wasn't even completely aware of. So that's just great. And thank you to Dr. Barrett and the middle school principals. I know it's a difficult topic to talk about such a big shift. I mean, it's been over 20 years since I was at Geneva Middle School when there was only one. We had teams. So it is a big shift, and I know there's a lot of thought, and there will be a lot of learning coming out of that. And we'll have to have some really good reflections on what's working, what we need to adjust, and how we need to address any gaps, because I'm sure it's not going to just be smooth sailing all the way. And for our parents and students to provide us feedback along the way so we can make sure we're living up to the results that we have delivered every year since, we've been a district. So thank you, though, for the presentation. I think it's good information, and I'm glad we got to have a good discussion about that. Also, thank you to all of our groups who donated gifts this week. It was just nice to see a lot of different areas, whether it was the Special Olympics team, robotics, or music, just the help that the community offers to those groups, and that's always really appreciated. Thank you, everyone, for the retreat last Friday. That was, I thought, a good use of time overall. We accomplished a lot in that meeting. And then I got to attend the Blue Ribbon flag raising at Heartland Elementary. So just nice to see some of the things that Heartland Elementary School is doing this winter to celebrate their Blue Ribbon Award. And so they did a flag raising, and then they had a Blue Ribbon Ball. So I know all the kids and staff are having fun celebrating a big accomplishment over there.
Thank you. Willard?
Yes, I want to thank the principal, Mr. Rogers, for presenting this opportunity for us to see and hear and in some way vicariously experience some of this caring. And as I really feel it's inherent that there's compassion, and somewhat like what Molly was saying, I think that some of these things, these activities that these students are engaged in, actually will help promote some healing. And I think that the more that we embrace the fact that we all are suffering at some level or another for a variety of reasons, just on a daily basis, I think these, I'm no mental health expert, but I imagine that this is a opportunity for them to purge some, I would dare say, darker things inside of themselves to bring out the best of everybody. I mean, that's just the way it seems. I don't know. Also, I just want to highlight, if you didn't see on Channel 5 News on Saturday, one of our students, Geneva High School, Sophia Border. Did you see that? Yeah. She's the long distance runner. Well, I saw her at church yesterday, and I said, "Was that you?" And so I watched her grow up, basically. But it was just really nice to have all the students that they could highlight on the news. They interviewed her, so she was featured on the 10 o'clock news for participating in this half marathon. So anyway, I thought that was good representation for Geneva schools. Yeah.
She's been here for being very fast many times already. Yeah.
Jackie?
Yeah, just briefly, again, thanks to Mr. Rogers for coming and talking about the high school, about caring, community, and respect. I liked how he put those 3 different topics out there. Community, every week or every meeting, we have donations that we get from various members of our community, and it does show how important our school district is to our community, and then we have that great relationship with them. And the respect, definitely want to reiterate, come on out to the game this Saturday. It will be wonderful. It's in the contest gym, which I think is really exciting because the other games have been in Mac Olson, but to have that game in the big gym, and it sounds like it's really going to be a fun night or afternoon. So definitely come on up for that. And thanks for the presentation about the middle schools. Because, yeah, difficult topic. And going back to community, we all have our memories or our thoughts about how things are at the middle school, but we have to understand that sometimes things will change, and we'll come together again as a community as we go through this change. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jackie. I was at a PTO meeting. I second Molly's thoughts about the community and interaction. We have an extraordinary school district here with a lot of caring people. It's a pleasure to have this job with this district. With that, notices and announcement, there are none. Item 13, if someone would like to make a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.